Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 14th October 2020, and these are the couple of articles that we'll be dealing today. So this article titled "A Concerted Attack on RTI" is a critical analysis of the performance of RTI 15 years after it came into existence. So recently there was a report by Satrak Nagrik Sangathan and the Center for Equity Studies. The report said that there were nearly 2.2 lakh RTI cases which were pending at the central and state information commissions, and these are the final courts of appeal under RTI Act 2005. So this is a serious cause of concern because this would not take a lot of time to clear these cases, given the fact that we have an elaborate machinery established under the RTI Act and the modus operandi has been clearly established. So what is the reason for this 2.2 lakh RTI cases? We'll be looking in this article. But before that, let me explain some brief provisions about the Right to Information Act. In this context, we have to speak specifically about the RTI Amendment Act of 2019, which has sought to prescribe a term for the Chief Information Commissioner and the Information Commissioner of the state. So it was laid down in this act that the term will be prescribed by the central government. Now this is a conflict of interest because whenever a body is to function very objectively, it should stay away from the control of the government, because there is a possibility that the central government might use this provision to hold the offices in their control and stop them from their effective functioning. So this is a antithesis for the idea of democratic institution, yet this act was passed. So in this act it was provided that the salary, allowances and other conditions of the CIC and the information commissioner shall be again prescribed by the central government. So you are deciding the term, you are deciding the salary and other emoluments, which is very central for a job. It is very likely that the central government, as a design of the institution, if there are no checks and balances, might use this provision against the officer who is doing his duty as per the RTI. So this has been a very controversial provision. Before this amendment, the salary, allowances and other service conditions of the Chief Information Commissioner were just like the Election Commissioner. Thus, by diluting the provisions of the original act, this 2019 act has actually diluted the very spirit of the law itself. Apart from this, there are various other issues that were stopping the effectivity of RTI Act. Let us have a look at them one by one. The first one is misuse. When we are talking about the misuse, there are a lot of issues with respect to the RTI usage due to the non-applicability of the locus standi rule and non-requirement of giving reasons. That is, as per the act of this RTI 2005, there is no need to cite your reasons for seeking particular information, and there is no need to ensure that you are an aggrieved person to seek that information. So because of these provisions, RTI Act has been misused by a lot of petitioners. So this leaves an ample scope for non-serious information seekers to misuse it, which has created a environment where the public offices are filled with frivolous RTI application. On the other hand, other big problem is there is low awareness. So a segment of the population is misusing it, and a large segment is actually not even aware of the aspects that are empowering to them. RTI is one of the probable tools which can hold the government accountable for all its actions. Yet public awareness is very low with respect to the rights they have and as well as the duties that they should perform in this aspect. Like we have already spoken, there is a huge delay because of the backlog in the cases, and one of the major reasons for that is vacancies. A lot of information commissioner posts are lying vacant, and insufficient number of information commissioners at the central level has created this backlog. So whenever we are talking about appeal, there is a provision that the act does not provide any limit within which the second appeal to the CIC must be heard. So what happens is the applicant has to wait for months in order to have his or her case in the CIC. The other aspect is about enforceability. What happens is the act has no authority, has not given adequate authority to the information commissioners to enforce their decisions. So whatever decisions they take is not binding, and this provision has actually crippled the information commissioners. They can give directions to public authorities to take certain steps necessary to comply with the act, but they are not empowered to take any action. Then what is the use of this information commissioner powers? That is the question. On one hand, we have right to information, but then again we have secrecy also. There is restriction by the legislative framework in the form of Official Secrets Act 1923, where a lot of information has been blocked from accessing. So this secrecy is again a part of the problem when we're talking about RTI. So in this context, we also have to talk about the PM Cares Fund, because when we're talking about PM Cares, we have to understand that through the speech given by the finance minister on the floor of the house, we understand that it is completely out of the ambit of RTI. So this is again a problematic issue, because the government should be transparent enough to show how these funds are utilized. The money in these funds is coming from public contribution. So it is every right of the public to understand how these funds are being utilized, and the fact that the government has blocked access to information with respect to the functioning of PM Cares is a antithesis for the idea of accountability and transparency. So all these issues should be corrected, and RTI should be again brought back into the scene with all its glory as a hallmark of a legislation which ensures transparency, accountability, and also ensure grievance redressal. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Mint, and it is titled A Framework to Make Stakeholder Capitalism Effective. So this idea of stakeholder capitalism is propounded by World Economic Forum. So this organization has realized that the present scheme of things, where we are emphasizing on shareholders, that is the people who are investing in the company for profits, and every decision is taken in the interest of the shareholders, is proving to be a problem, as it is giving rise to inequality between the workers who are a part of this system, and at the same time shareholders who are taking a big pie of the profits that they are getting. Now, yesterday we have had an article from Raghuram Rajan criticizing the view that we have to adopt stakeholder capitalism, and we have to let go of the shareholder capitalism view. So according to Rajan, he said that the reason why shareholders take a significant chunk of the profit that they are making is because they are putting in extra work. So the extra work that they put in will be justified for the shareholders excess profiteering. So a manager who is a part of the bridge between the system of the workers and the shareholders is wise enough to understand that he has to manage the personal life of an individual worker, whereas shareholders are working beyond their normal limits at the cost of their personal life sometimes, and that is the reason why they are taking in more money. So this idea, which was propounded by Milton Friedman, who was a Nobel Prize winner, a liberal economist thinker, still holds true. But the fact is, due to the rise of inequality, the unrest in the world is growing. There is a call for completely taking away this system of capitalism from the discussion and create a welfare state. Now we have understood that through the history, this idea of capitalism is the only driver for growth. Now, the problem for any economy is not the driver for growth, but it is rather the mechanism for redistribution. So, how are you redistributing your wealth? That is the biggest question. Now, when we are talking about redistribution, there is an allegation that a segment of the society is functioning at its highest potential possible and earning revenue for the state in the form of taxes. So, the top 1% are paying heavily in the form of taxation, and they are getting very little in the return. Whereas, when we are talking about redistribution, the lower rung of the society don't contribute as much, and therefore they are actually taking away a significant chunk of this tax revenue, which is paid by the top 1%. This is the basic argument against the idea of socialism. So, capitalists and free liberal thinkers are right in their context, and also the people who believe that inequality should end are also right. So, the middle path for both these ideas is the idea of stakeholder capitalism. Now, in this article, what we are trying to understand is what should be the components of this idea to make it work and ensure that the problem of inequality is solved, and at the same time, the concerns of the top taxpayers are also addressed. So, this is the idea with which we progress in this article. One of the myth that needs to be debunked at the initial point of this discussion when we're talking about the proponents of stakeholder capitalism is the fact that they don't want government intervention. This is a myth. They are not against government intervention. What the proponents of this idea say is responsible corporates make the job of the government easy and in return seek help from the government by ensuring that government is also a part of the entire process of taking care of their stakeholders. But what if corporations are so powerful that they design the regulations themselves? This is the biggest question that plagues the proponents of this idea. The problem with the entire setup is that there are certain companies which create an illusion of a corporate practice which is emphasizing this idea of stakeholder capitalism. Like they are actually caring for their employees, but they are mere propaganda or PR tools that don't really happen on the ground. But again, having said that, there are certain companies which actually provide certain value to the society. Say, for example, if you're talking about Google, if we can use the technology prowess of Google, we can deliver public services in a much better way. Whether it is in the form of, for example, healthcare delivery, or whether it is in the form of education, they already have a set infrastructure in place. But at the same time, governments must understand the concerns of Google and what it can do to make job easier for companies like Google to stop any over regulation. So companies should work with the government, and they will work with the government only when there is an assurance from the government that they will not be harassed. So this value proposition that exists between the private companies and the government depends on this element of mutual trust and transparency. So this can be very subjective. Therefore, the most important thing that is required is establishing democratic institutions. Now, what happens when companies are involved is actually it is the money power that is dictating the relationship between the organizations and the government. Rather, in the larger public interest and also the long term interest of the companies, it should be the creation of these democratic institutions that should be the focus of this idea of stakeholder capitalism. Now, what are these democratic institutions? The cardinal feature of democracy is representation. Now, when we are talking about representation, we should understand representation of whom? Who are the people who will be a part of the decision making process? Who else rather than the stakeholders? So we have to address the concerns of all the stakeholders in this decision making process with deliberate understanding of the concerns of the corporate which is actually paying the money for these employees. So all these factors should be taken into consideration, and then decisions that are relevant for public should be arrived at. This is the gist of this article, which emphasizes the idea of stakeholder capitalism. This is a very important article and a very important idea, because moving forward without private sector contribution, even if you're talking about the MSME sector, which provides nearly half of the employment in our country in organized sector, it is important to understand this concept and take it forward. That is the gist of this article.